that it sends ripples out into the universe, change ripples all over the world. And so we give thanks that the work done here today in this virtual space has repercussions all around the world, encouraging people to choose health in every area of their lives, through their habits, through their thoughts, through their feelings, through their behaviors, through their words, through their reactions. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you. I know you hear me when I pray. And so I just relax because I know that this fair is blessed and that it's going to be an amazing event. And so I put it in your hands and I watch and I see the glory exemplified through Dr. Sherry and all of the invited guests, in the name and through the power that's in the consciousness of Jesus the Christ. We affirm that this is so, and so it is.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am so glad to be here, and I greet you with hope and faith. I am glad to be part of this wellness fair, and I want to talk about what a healthy mind is and what the role of therapy can be on the individual as well as the collective consciousness. And by collective consciousness, I mean us together. So why don't we start by defining what therapy is? Therapy is the process in which the therapist and the client discuss a myriad of issues, events, experiences, and memories for the purpose of creating positive change so the client can experience life more fully. Therapy also provides an opportunity to better understand one's self, as well as identifying problems or difficulties that the client is experiencing or has experienced. Therapy is a tool. It is not magic. The therapist is trained in human behavior across cultural and ethnic populations. Why do we think what we think? Why do we feel what we feel? Why do we do what we do? Therapy is a safe, non-judgmental, non-blaming, non-shaming space. The space is filled with hope and empathy. The therapist is trained to understand the developmental stages of life, starting with childhood, understanding cultural social norms and their societal expectations. We, all of us, are the sum total of all of our life experiences, consciously or unconsciously. We get information about ourselves from our parents, our siblings, family, community, church, media. They all give us some information about who we are. And we, in turn, create an opinion about who we are, about who others are, and how we show up in the world, how we move about in the world. In other words, we create a story or a narrative about who we are. We begin in therapy to examine our thoughts. Are the thoughts true? Where are they coming from? And how do they impact my life? Maybe we begin to challenge those thoughts and we reframe those thoughts so they're more helpful to us. We examine how we express our feelings. Are they helpful or hurtful to ourselves or others? And how do those feelings show up in our bodies? Our bodies hold our feelings. We learn how to regulate our feelings instead of reacting negatively. We examine the behaviors or the actions we take towards others or ourselves. Our mind holds the thoughts. Our body, our nervous system holds the feelings or sensations. Studies have shown that dramatic events are linked to greater activity in the brain areas that process fear and less activity in parts of the prefrontal cortex that processes reason. In other words, we can often make decisions out of fear rather than reason. What we think in our mind creates a feeling, and that feeling causes us to take an action or create a behavior. So the goal for all of us is to be healthy individuals. And what does that mean? A healthy individual has enough courage to stand up for themselves. That includes being honest with ourselves, being insightful, being willing to make changes, being mature, finding forgiveness, using our words to ask for what we want, asking for help, creating healthy boundaries, being objective and mindful of how we show up in the world, and knowing what do we give meaning to, things around us, the people around us. And as I say to my clients over and over, it is important to know what is my stuff and what is not my stuff to unpack. That is very, very important. Yes, and there still is a stigma about therapy. You must be crazy to go to therapy. Don't air your dirty laundry in public, or you might be embarrassed about some experience that you might have had. But in avoiding that, in avoiding getting the help that you need, you prevent yourself from getting help, and you keep reliving and continuing to suffer and limit your ability to evolve, to grow, and to express more of yourself and to enjoy life more. Therapy cannot solve all problems or all issues, but successful therapy can help you become stronger than the event or the experiences by increasing your coping skills and understanding of what we can and cannot control. For the past 4 months, we all have been affected, from the COVID pandemic to the murder of George Floyd, along with other people of color, the civil unrest taking place throughout this country. We all have experienced some emotional and psychological trauma, and as a result, the overwhelming and stressful events may have shattered your sense of security. You may have feelings of helplessness, having fear of the unknown, having a loss of control, feeling isolated, feeling some anxiety, anger, triggering even past events, using maladaptive behavior, feeling overwhelmed, rage, and even feelings of revenge. Some of you may be experiencing some or all of those, and they are a normal response to trauma, and they vary in degrees from person to person. In March, we were all told to go home and stay home due to the pandemic. No contact with people, no contact with others other than the people you live with. No social interactions, no outdoor activities, no movies, no sports games, no going to church, gyms, bars, or malls. We were faced with the unknown, faced with isolation, loss of control, and fear of others. That trauma may have created a high degree of anxiety, loss of sleep, loss of appetite, overeating, confusion, difficulty concentrating, mood swings, and yes, even weird dreams and lack of motivation. For those who have to leave the house to go to work, that sets up another layer of concern for yourself and others. And many of us have had such difficulty wrapping our head around what is going on in this world with this unseen thing called COVID-19. And going through all of that, trying to figure it all out, we then experienced another trauma of a murdered man in May that led to social unrest, caused many to feel traumatized again. The recent murder of a Black man triggered the collective consciousness of all of us. Those of us who have and are experiencing racial aggressions, those who have found it uncomfortable to talk about racial aggressions, and those who may live in denial of such racial aggressions. And some who may be unaware that their interactions with others is unconscious racial aggression towards others who do not look like them. For those who lived these racial aggressions for years, for decades and generations, it triggered anger and it exploded into rage, causing a fight response, leading to all the marches and the protests. For those uncomfortable talking about racial injustices or in denial of having to examine the messages they receive from the others, are having to examine their own narrative that they created to avoid the flight response. I don't want to talk about it. It's over. It's done. Let's move on. And those who are in denial about racial aggressions have to resist the avoidance response. Well, maybe we can talk about something else. The collective consciousness, all of us, have been shocked into the awareness, and now we have to ask hard and uncomfortable questions and be willing to hear the truth. We have been forced to have nationwide family therapy. We have to talk about the wrongs. We have to talk about the wounds. We have to talk about the bruises. We have to talk about the abuses. We have to talk about the silence that has created the injustices that have been perpetrated. And we have to talk about the injustices that have been suffered. What we have been taught about others is how we treat ourselves. We must talk about how the generational consciousness has been passed down to others and projected onto others. And much like individual therapy, it is uncomfortable. People want to drop out, go back to their lives, and not examine the mindset that created these circumstances. If, like individual therapy, we can allow for awkward conversation and set the intent to be to understand, to be understood, to be honest, and are willing to change, progress will and can be made. We are seeing the collective consciousness now shifting. And it's okay that it's not pretty. It's more important that it started and it continues. Humans often resist change because it requires internal work, sweat, and tears. And with all that has been going on these many months, that has triggered all of us in so many ways, how do we maintain a sense of well-being as we move through this unknown, this new inflexible normal that is constantly changing? There are some things that we can do. There are some things that we can control, and that is getting enough sleep. Restorative sleep improves our memory, stamina, and energy level. It improves our ability to learn and to concentrate. It improves our mood and general health. Nutritious food helps the body to maintain strength and clarity of mind. Sleep and food for your mind and body health are like oil and gas for your car. No matter how pretty it is on the outside, what matters is what is under the hood. Movement or some form of exercise helps the energy in your body to move and helps to increase your mood, helps to decrease depression, and you sleep better. Taking some quiet time for meditation, reflection, and deep breathing increases oxygen and has a calming effect. When we want to be comforted, we want to be with people to hold and to hug. And being denied that is another form of isolation. So we have to find ways to stay in touch with people, like Zoom, phone calls, keeping social distance from others, but maintaining a connection, like taking a walk together. These actions can maintain a sense of control and safety. Asking for help is not weakness. It indicates that you want to move from an uncomfortable place that is blocking health of mind, that impacts body and spirit, and evolve to a healthier, happier, grateful place. So you can show up in the world, take up space, speak your mind, and have healthy relationships with others. You know, the pages of our past have already been written and published, but the pages of tomorrow, 30 seconds from now, are still blank. We can fill them. I want you to be empowered for you to write your own story. It is important how you get information and where you get information from. Take care of yourself. God bless.
Well, it is a pleasure. It's a pleasure being a part of this event, this health wellness fair. And I'm delighted to be able to talk to you today and to be able to share what I can to be of assistance to you, to your families, to those of you that are out there that are feeling challenged. Now, I feel humbled to have been invited. I've been doing a lot of work in and around the you know, the South Bay area, as well as even in Riverside. They're at the detention center there, working with some of the people that have been involved in crimes and trying to, reorientate themselves into society. And it was a pleasure working there as well. And I've also worked with families with children on the autism spectrum, providing parenting classes to them. Now, what I've found out is that, especially with clients that I see there in San Pedro, now I can see basically people from all over, virtually, which I think in some ways it's actually broadened things now that I'm able to talk to more people since we're using, virtual counseling. It's just allowed me to be able to talk to more people. And I'm excited about the opportunities to be able to help people. Now, I am a listener. I listen. I try not to talk too much. I found out that a lot of people, they really need to be heard. They've got a lot of things they want to share, and they need to be able to express it. And in some cases, a lot of people are frustrated because they're not being heard. And especially during this pandemic, some people are isolated. They're cut off. They don't have the same social connections as they've had in the past. So I'm finding that there's a lot of people that are experiencing a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression, and they need to be able to connect again and to talk. So some people, oddly enough, they just want to talk. They just got a lot of things on their mind, and they need to talk. Now, for the most part, I utilize a cognitive behavioral therapy for the most part, which really means some people, they have a lot of faulty belief systems operating in their lives. And so when you have a lot of inappropriate information and you have a lot of illogical thinking, then it's going to lead to a lot of illogical conclusions. And so I'm there to help them to lay things out, to point out some of the red flags and some of the situations that have created some of the faulty thinking, and help them to readjust their thinking so that they can come to logical and appropriate solutions for their life. And of course, then thereby their lifestyle is going to be a lot more productive because they're thinking better. If I can get people to think better, then guess what? They're going to act better. Their families are going to be a lot more strengthened and productive. Now, because life happens, some people are experiencing a lot of things that they probably would not have ordinarily experienced, a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. And because of the fact that we're engaged in the midst of the coronavirus, then we know that there's job pressures, there are childcare issues. Unfortunately, we have a lot of women that are working full-time jobs from home, and now they're forced to take care of the children at home at the same time, and then be able to maintain their family structure is pressure. And a lot of people are running into a lot of difficulties because of the coronavirus, and so therefore the depression levels are increasing. In fact, 1/3 of Americans have reported that they've experienced greater degrees of stress and anxiety, according to the Census Bureau and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So they're getting a lot of these reports. And also, the domestic violence rates have increased because of the coronavirus, and people having to be at home, men and husbands and wives being in closer proximity, along with the financial pressures, because understand, it's been told that 1/3 of the businesses will not reopen because of the pandemic. 1/3, and that's a lot. And also 55% of the businesses that either will not reopen or are opening up, 55% of them will not rehire the same workers. And so there's some people that are not going back to those same businesses. And so there's an increased use of alcohol, an increased use of drugs. And so that just creates a I guess a vacuum of disparity and frustration that in some cases it just blows up. It just blows up. And so we know then that because of the high depression rates and anxiety, in fact, compared to last year, there was only 11% of the population that reported that there were difficulties with depression or anxiety, compared to now 1/3 of US citizens are reporting that there are difficulties. Now, not that all of them are experiencing clinical depression, but they've experienced the feelings of sadness or frustration, loneliness, things that could lead to it, or disparities in having a reasonable social life. Because, let's face it, we're social creatures. And when you don't have those same creature comforts and social outlets, like I miss going to the movies. I miss going to the movies. But, now we're watching more on television and looking at video stations and playing video games and looking at some of the video channels. And so that's a part of it. Now, also, I know that there was a question about suicide rates as it pertains to African Americans. I noticed that I'm looking at Dr. Alvin Toussaint's study from the Harvard Medical School, that between 1980 and 1995, that the suicide rate among Black men doubled, nearly 8 deaths per 100,000 people. And suicide now is the third leading cause of death among Black men between the ages of 15 and 24. But also a CNN report stated between 1991 and 2017, the rate of reported suicide attempts of African American teens rose, especially the rate among Black boys. And according to a study published Monday in the Medical Journal of Pediatrics, the rate for Black youths grew even as the rate of suicide attempts by teens and other racial and ethnic groups fell. So the suicide attempt among Blacks is even increasing. And you notice that because of some areas where there is increased poverty and increased crime, increased stress, then that's just exacerbating the situation even more so. In fact, it was found that Black children ages 5 to 12, the suicide rate was found to be 2 times higher compared to white children. And so that's astronomical, because the children, in fact, a lot of my clients that I've talked to that have children, in fact, some of the children that I've talked to, they are just basically climbing up the wall, and the parents don't seem to have enough, available activities for them. And so they're not as creative as they probably should be in some cases, but some of the creativity has been affected by the increased stress that the parents are experiencing. And so I just wanted to bring that out to you. And so, yes, I'm talking with a lot of parents, a lot of clients that are experiencing depressive symptoms and anxiety. And in fact, if they can just talk it out, they usually come to some good conclusions. If they can just talk it out, and then we try to steer them in the right direction and utilize the kinds of interventions that's going to help them out the most. And Jay Adams wrote a book a few years ago that it was called "Ready to Restore." Ready to Restore. And great book, by the way. And I utilized that as the Enon Bible School, teaching some of the students there in counseling. And it proved to be a very useful tool to me. And some of the things that I garnered from it, as well as looking into it myself, basically is in Galatians 6:1 in the Message Bible, the scripture says, Live creative, friends. If someone falls into sin, forgivingly restore him, saving your critical comments for yourself. You might be needing forgiveness before the day is out. And so understand this, that among the African American or the faith community or the African American community, it's, it's usually been frowned upon to seek out therapeutic services. It's something that has, been, portrayed as something that it's weak. A man is weak if he goes and seeks out counseling. But you know what? People go to the doctor, they go to the hospitals if they're not feeling well. They'll seek out, they'll seek out people that can help them with their physical problems. Why not with their emotional problems? And so we are here to be able to assist people who are struggling with their challenges, not just depression and anxiety, but a myriad of other situations, marital difficulties, relational problems, parent-child issues. But we want to be able to let people know that interventions and assistance and help and a listening ear is very critical to the word restoration. In fact, that's what we do. The best part of counseling or therapy is to restore people, to get them back to the place where they were functioning well, where they got results, where they were more happier and more content with themselves. And so I want to be able to help people even from a biblical perspective, but even if they're not Christians, as we see it, our role is to help people be restored, to get them back to a place where they can function and get results and lead a more happier life. And so when that word was written in the Greek, it basically addressed several areas that people were dealing with, even looking at it metaphorically, where we have the disciples with torn nets, and they weren't able to bring in fish if their nets, the nets that they, would hurl out into the ocean and gather fish, if their nets were torn, then those nets need to be restored or put back in place. Also, you got the situation where if something is broken, of course, there would be a work of restoring that which was broken. Or if, in the case of the woman that lost the coin, she lost one of her coins in her house, and she was desperate for getting people to help her find that lost coin. It's about restoring or bringing back that money, putting things back in place. And so whether it's a torn net, whether it's a broken vessel or a broken arm, or even that which has been lost, it's all about restoring. And there are a lot of people whose lives have been torn. Things have been broken in their relationships, and also they got losses. People experience a lot of losses, and so what we try to do is restore them. And so think about it. If it's a relationship that has been torn, we try to repair it, to put that relationship back in place, to get those individuals, whether it be couples or whether it be a family. We try to get them to see that which has been torn apart, and we try to help them heal it. We try to get them to see what they need to do to make things better. So we get into a process of reconciliation, being able to restore, put things back, put forgiveness back in place, put loving kindness back in place, put affection back in place. Even if it's something that has been broken, try to reset it. If an arm's been broken, of course, the doctors try to reset it. And so as a therapist, we try to reset the relationships, reset the communication, making sure that everything is back in place. And if something's been lost, a lot of times people have experienced losses, and they have difficulties being able to see how their life can go on despite that loss. We try to get them to see the fact that You have not just lost. Look what you gained from that individual's life. Look at what this individual contributed to your own personal happiness. And so we try to get them not to remove that person from their thoughts, but to be able to appreciate the fact that they had someone in their lives that loved them for a period of time. And see, we know the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. We try to get them to enjoy what they had, not to groan or to moan or to grieve as much about what they lost. And we know that's a difficult time for everybody. And so no one likes to lose, but in order to be restored back to healthy living, there's got to be a healthy appreciation for life, and even to be able to see the benefits of what one has lost. And so it's all about now restoration, restoring love, restoring joy, restoring a sense of purpose. And so during this time of pandemic, many people feel like they've lost control. That's right. They feel like somebody else is in control of their lives, and they don't like it. They don't like it. So it's going to take a lot of patience to be able to get people to know, yes, you need to practice social distancing. Yes, you need to keep your mask on. And though you may feel it's a loss of your liberties, it's actually bringing you back to liberty, because it takes cooperation. It takes a lot of obedience. It takes a lot of teamwork. And so we want to help people. And generally what we try to do, as I prepare to conclude, is to be able to give people tools so that they can be able to restore their life back to a place of good solutions and good reactions and good family and good marriages and good friendships, and even just dealing with being disconnected during these difficult times. And so here's a couple of tips that I usually give for some of my clients in helping them to relieve feelings of depression or anxiety, and to basically kind of keep their perspective. One, maintain your daily habits. Whatever you've been used to doing, you want to get back to maintaining those daily habits, those routines, because routines bring security. And be consistent with those daily routines. Stick with your goals. And so you have goals. In essence, no, you need to go back to school. I know it's difficult being able to study online, but don't let breaks operate and cause you to lose your consistency in going towards your goals. Stay connected with your family and friends. Do not isolate. Don't isolate. So many people, they don't have big families, and some people, they're by themselves. You may need to call some people that aren't connected with a family, and that helps them, but it also helps you, because touching other people's lives is like sowing seeds of love. It's going to come back to you. Take care of your personal health, including 30 minutes, at least 30 minutes of exercise, and which causes your body to release endorphins, getting that natural high. And we know that there's so much more that we can do to help ourselves by taking care of our personal health, self-care. Take care of yourself. Take time to rest. We encourage that. Now people have an opportunity to rest more. In some cases, you're not having to drive to work. Some people are going back to work. I know that. And then there are still a lot of people that are operating and doing their businesses at home, and that's good. And so do things in moderation. Make sure you do things in moderation. Have a simple to-do list. Don't overload yourselves and thereby have to deal with a lot of stress of trying to do too many things at one time. Keep your plate small. Right? Demonstrate gratitude to other people that have helped you. There's a lot of love going around right now. Do your share, and also share gratitude to those people that have helped you. Keep your appointments. Any appointments you make, don't allow what goes on social media, what's going on CNN, the news can depress you. And so you may need to change up, watch some comedies, and take a bike ride and do some things that take you away from looking at the pandemic. And so you want to do that. But also journaling is important to be able to identify your good times and knowing that there are good times going on, even though there may be bad times going on as well. You need to have some balance. That's very important. Reject negative thoughts about yourself and others. Many times, some people, they want to call you and tell you all the bad news, everything that's going wrong in the world. But you know, there's some good things going on too. It's important to know that there's still people helping people. People are coming out of the hospitals, they're being healed, they're being helped, and there are good books being written. People are redeveloping their goals and their activities. Great things are happening. So you want to be a part of that. Do something fun every day. Do something fun every day. That's right. Do some things at home. Do some things outside. Go out and shoot baskets. Don't take on too many chores or challenges. Spend time with positive people. Spending time with positive people will make a difference. And also find and use a mentor. That's right. There are mentors that can help you to stay focused as well. And so celebrate this day. Mindfulness meditation is also helpful. Mindfulness meditation, that is to meditate on the things that are great, good, wonderful, positive. I am delighted to have spent this time with you. And I want you to know that I look forward to being able to help other people. And that's one of my great joys, in being able to help people to sort things out and get back to a restorative life and to find happiness. Thank you all so much for your time. I appreciate you very much.
Our greatest gift I can give to my kids is the gift of knowledge, the gift of health. So in that way, I can transform their epigene, that trigger, that light switch, that trigger that's going to determine, do they have to have disease or not? This does not have to be your story. And it's not to tell you that you're going to live forever, that there's never going to be an end. There's a beginning and an end, but the question is, how are those final chapters going to be written in your book?
Slave food is food that was refused by those in power. It's the stuff nobody else wanted, that the slaves then had to figure out a way to make taste good and to try and sustain life on.
It's the manipulation of nutrition for profit and for power.
Slave food is really about answering that really quintessential question. Why do black people in America die sicker and sooner than everyone else?
The most common habit really is processed food, of eating food. They use food essentially as a way of de-stressing, of anti-anxiety or antidepressants, how food is really now used in order to kind of medicate to get a sense of feeling better.
So, I mean, it's well documented that the majority of diseases that people of color suffer from are directly related to what they eat, right? We know that. So, on the converse, we can combat them by what we eat.
Every 7 minutes, there's a premature death. Pretty staggering. It's overwhelming that we are dying sicker and sooner than everyone else at these rates.
Why does this happen? From the idea of stress, it can be life stressors, but also the idea really about this unique idea of a racial discriminatory stress that plays an impactful role in the manifestation of disease.
Stress is powerful because stress is something you feel on a very 30,000 foot level, like an airplane up in the sky, but it manifests itself on a cellular level. So you feel it macroscopically, but it actually manifests microscopically. But food is important because food is the only way you can actually reverse that stress.
In terms of the African American experience and African American community, really it dates back to the origin, Western Africa, and that sojourn over into Americas, inside the Caribbean, inside of South America. That middle passage that was there where food had to be rationed. Food was a method of power. Slave food that's been processed, chemically modified in order to get the greatest bliss point or engagement.
The food swamp is flooding our neighborhoods with calories. That's really the swamp. It's a swamp of nutrient poor, calorie dense, low cost foods in areas where people don't make a lot of money. So you go into poor neighborhoods and there's no grocery store, no real grocery store with that's clean and produce is fresh and it's replaced on a very regular basis. Everything we eat, every time we eat, is an investment in our longevity, in our health. It either is making you healthier or it's making you sicker.
African Americans globally, specifically in the United States, have this sense that my mom had it, my dad had it. I'm not gonna live to a certain age. I'm gonna get diabetes. I'm going to have a stroke. I'm gonna have it. And so it's destiny. And what I want folks to know is that it's not destiny. Your DNA is not your destiny.
It's good to be here. I am so appreciative of the opportunity. At every instance, when I have an opportunity to speak on the benefits of nutrition, the benefits of health that can transform lives, I'm always excited. I have family who tell me, if you want to see me smile, let me go ahead and start talking about how you can transform your life. And so I'm very pleased to be here today. Let's go ahead and put up the video and we'll jump into, or rather the PowerPoint, let's jump into our brief talk today. All right. Very good. So, 2020 has been extremely interesting. And it's uncovered a lot. We started with the unfortunate passing of Kobe Bryant, the Laker legend. And it seemed like everything went downhill quickly ever since then, as this virus seemed to spread across China into Europe and into the United States, sweeping and impacting all of us. And the one thing that it uncovered quickly and distinctly is really the problem in America, which is our health disparities. What we know beyond a shadow of a doubt as Americans is that nearly 60% of us have chronic disease, and 40% have two or more chronic diseases. And what we mean by chronic diseases are things like diabetes and high blood pressure, high cholesterol, heart attacks and strokes are the things that we know. And we begin to transform our lives from revolving around activities and social events to doctor visits and to pills and taking things. And so coronavirus distinctly uncovered that the death toll in America is faster than in other areas, that our occurrence of the infection has been much higher in the United States compared to European nations, that, as a matter of fact, we're dying sicker and sooner than everyone else around the country. And it's shown distinctly that despite all of our expertise, our prowess in technology, the life expectancy of Americans compared to other industrialized countries is amongst the poorest in the world. What it's shown too as well is that we spend more money on healthcare, despite trailing at the bottom in terms of our health outcomes. Not only that, as I mentioned before, we have the highest burden of chronic disease when you look at the United States across the board. That our rate of obesity, I mean big bonedness, is a bit higher. And I'll get back to that because that's extremely important when we look at this issue surrounding COVID and SARS-CoV concerns that are hitting us too as well, that we have amongst the highest rates. We know that amongst deaths that are avoidable, meaning that we know 80% of chronic disease, diabetes, kidney failure, strokes, and heart attacks are preventable. Nearly 40% of cancers are preventable through our actions. Are as powerful that we suffer with some of the most preventable or avoidable diseases across the United States. Despite our treatments, we have some of the poorest outcomes. We don't seem to get the quality treatment that happens. Now, here's the catch, is that not only do we have the poorest outcomes, these things are impacting us early on, and it's shortening what we characterize as our health span. So oftentimes I meet folks and they say, Doc, I'm not afraid of dying. You live and you're born, you're born and you die. It's how I live in between. But what I'm here to tell you is that it's about that health span. How long are you living unchained from medications, unchained from procedures, not revolving your daily schedule around the doctor's visit? And what we're finding is that we see there's a profoundly early onset of disease is what happens in this country. And as a result of this, there is nearly a 15, 16-year shortening of our healthy years of life lived. I mean, when I look back on my dad, this is coming up on 10 years since my father passed away from diabetes, a lifestyle preventable disease. What I know is that although his life ended at the age of 78, his health span ended markedly before that, many years before that, nearly 20 years before that time, as he was chained to needles and syringes and pills and things of that nature. And so COVID-19 2020 has really uncovered America's dirty little secret, but that's not America's dirty little secret about health, about the issues of the healthcare crisis in America. America's dirty little secret is really health disparities. Health disparities, as it's really struck people of Black and brown complexion, it's brought to the forefront that we are suffering at greater rates than everyone else around us, is what it's showing. As a matter of fact, what we know is that if you're African American, if you're of Latino descent, you're more likely to die of heart disease, 50% more likely to die from heart disease. You're more likely to die from any cause at an early age if you're Black or brown, that you're unable to afford seeing a doctor. Now, oftentimes inside of medicine training, you kind of just take this as fact. And we see that across the states, when you look at actuarians, that we see that African Americans, Black and brown individuals are more likely to die from treatable causes across all 50 states in the Union. We're dying sicker and sooner than everyone else. But the question I ask today is why? This is what led to the development of the concept of slave food. Why is it that Black and brown people die sicker and sooner? Is it because we're destined to this? Is it because we're somehow genetically positioned towards this? The answer is no. There is a simple, distinct answer as to why, and that falls in the realm of stress. We know that stress is distinctly and uniquely related to the onset of disease. Now, stress impacts all of us, and we can characterize stress within our presentation inside of our budding docu-series by my colleague Eric Walsh. Says stress equals demands minus resources. Now, you may be able to equate to this if you have children to pick up at 3 o'clock, when this is pre-COVID, of course, but yet you don't get off work until 5. The demands exceed the resources. If your bills are $1,000, but yet the paycheck coming in is $800, your demands exceed your resources, and there goes your stress. It's what we know beyond a shadow of a doubt. And so we know that stress equals demands minus resources, and that this equates to disease. The higher the stress levels, the higher the occurrence of breast cancer, coronary artery disease. Now, here's the catch. People of Black and brown hue have a unique stressor. That unique stressor is being Black in America. It's wearing and carrying this Black and brown skin, and studies have shown that racism is indeed a stressor, that racial discrimination is a stress. And this is what 2020 has really uncovered, the travesties of discrimination. How does this equate to health? We know that as a result of stress, that even if you perceive discrimination, you perceive it, right? That 48% of women were more likely to develop breast cancer. That if you perceive stress, we all remember the story of Oprah Winfrey going and shopping and asking to see, can I see that purse? And the attendant said, no, you cannot. You cannot afford it. She said, I'm Oprah. She said, she didn't say I'm Oprah Winfrey, but she said, I know, let me see the purse. I want to buy it. You can't afford it. She made assumptions based on the color of her skin. And those microaggressions, they lay the foundation for cracks and ruin that lead to disease. And studies have confirmed this, showing that individuals who experience emotional stressors related to racial discrimination are increased risk of blocked carotid arteries, blockages, and calcification in their coronary arteries, leading to their heart. But not only that, shorten what we call telomeres. Now, telomeres are like the ends of your shoelaces, only present on your DNA. And as those shoelaces begin to shorten and shorten and shorten, what we find out is that there goes your lifespan. And so what studies are showing and are confirming that individuals of color who are under increased heightened stress have very shortened telomeres. There's actually a study that came out and showed that teen young African-American women had telomeres the same length as Caucasian women in their midlife who suffered with breast cancer, from those who are under the stressors of life. And so there's power. And so the higher our stress, the poorer our health. And some estimate that this is essentially like a plane crashing to the ground on a daily basis. Is the loss of lives, which results in billions of dollars every 7 minutes. A Black or brown person in America dies, and we say, why? Well, the issue is, in part, we say that that all roads lead back to the heart. All roads lead back to a cause of why is this happening? Stress impacts the lining of our vessels. Stress impacts us so profoundly that you have these vessels, which are like water hoses that you buy from your local gardening store. Could be Walmart, could be Lowe's, could be Home Depot. And when you press on that water hose, it compresses, doesn't it? But let's say you leave it out in the Sahara Desert baking and seething there. That rubber pipe becomes stiff. It's no longer pliable, and so it's rigid, and that's what we call arteriosclerosis. And when that area becomes invaded, right, it's clogged and cluttered like the pipes in your home. That's called atherosclerosis. That inner lining is called the endothelium, and that protects the body. And what we find is that once there's dysfunction there, it leads to devastation throughout the body. And as a matter of fact, researchers have shown this is one of the avenues that leads to the coronavirus attacking us. It's through the vascular system, it's through the receptors. And this is perhaps one of the reasons why children are less as pronounced with coronavirus as adults are, but we're seeing it more exceptionally higher in older individuals. We're seeing it inside people with high blood pressure, with heart disease, with strokes, and with obesity is what we're seeing. And so there's power that's there that to harm us. When there is dysfunction there, it leads to everything from the head to the toe is what we see on a regular basis. But what I want you to know, this can seem overwhelming. It can seem as if all hope is lost. And so what's so powerful about events like this is that it's important for you to know that your DNA is not your destiny. You see, it was back in the 1990s that there were these experts out there, these researchers who started playing around with these rats. I hate rats. My family knows I hate rats. You want to see me not act manly, bring a rat around. And so these rats were big and they were yellow and they were prone towards obesity, prone towards diabetes and cancer. And they started feeding these rats, experimenting with vegetables and with beans and with garlic. And all of a sudden, these big rats that always gave birth to big rats that were yellow and prone towards the disease, all of a sudden gave birth to small, thin rats. They gave birth to small rats that were brown and no longer yellow. And that birthed the concept of epigenetics, the concept that your DNA is not your destiny. It does not have to be your destiny. So what we say is we say our health equals our resiliency divided by our stress. And so the events like this are tied to building your resiliency to amplify your health. Because when most of us become stressed, what we do, we turn to sweets. We get frustrated. We may go out on a double date with someone called Ben and Jerry's. And in an instance, it's because stress equals dessert spelled backwards. It's a palindrome. It's a reflection of what many of us do as the day wears on, our willpower dissipates, and we turn to things for temporary treatment. Right? We value that as rich in resources to augment the demands, but it's fake. It's fool's gold. It's not providing you with resources. And we create an environment what I characterize as nutritional stress. Eating foods, it's eating disease-forming foods, but it's also not eating health-promoting foods, which is really the key towards things. Our health is indeed tied to our resiliency. And what we know is we know that when we oftentimes think for choices, we have choices, but our tables look like this. They're filled with highly processed, refined foods. The greatest enemy is not the enemy as it pertains to eating Mediterranean versus paleo versus plant-based or anything. The greatest enemy is the standard American diet. Some call the deadly American diet. Right? And so what I want you to know today is that the food we eat impacts your health. The food that you eat can impact your health. It can restore your DNA. It can regenerate your cells. It can feed this layer of uncovered microbes in your body. We call it the microbiome. You're actually more bacterial DNA than you are human DNA. For many of us, we didn't know that. And these bacteria can either arm to fight disease for us, or they can turn on us and destroy us. And so the foods we eat, our mindset, our activities can either strengthen or refute those things. What studies have shown is that when individuals go and they partake of eating real food, whole food, fruits and vegetables, things that are identifiable by singular ingredients, broccoli and kale and spinach and blueberries, beans and grains, those things of that sort. What they found is that the vessels, which formerly were starting to get, remember I described to you how those vessels can become stiff and rigid and no longer compressible? Well, those vessels begin to relax by transforming their diet, and they begin to become distensible again, which means that they begin to become protective as there was restoration to what we call the endothelial cells. Studies have shown that as you moved away from eating rich animal fat, one of the things we talk about in the Slave Food Project is we speak about the food back from a historical connotation was refuse, food that was no longer wanted, food that was cast off, was given to the slaves back in that time. But the one thing that's never really brought out very much about that time period is that how resilient we were as a group of people. That not only did we make something out of nothing out of the food that was given to us and cast off, but we also grew food. We knew how to grow the vegetables and the fruit to augment and to supplement this. And so when studies have shown when you move away from eating these highly saturated fat foods, which are contained in animal products, that all of a sudden, guess what happens? Those vessels begin to become distensible. They improve in their function too as well. Studies have shown that overall, when you compare people who eat any and everything to those who eat mostly plants, rich in fruits and vegetables, that's biblical, right? You go back to Genesis 1:29. If you go into the restoration diet of the Daniel diet, we know that when you partake of that, all of a sudden there's restoration of your mind, body, and spirit that begins to happen. And we see this, that as you begin to move and walk and commune and meditate, that all of a sudden now we see these vessels begin to become distensible. They improve in their functionality. As a matter of fact, there's so much power. But here's the key. It's not all or none. Studies have shown as you begin to move from the orange bar down to the green bar, as you begin to move from eating any and everything down to a plant predominant diet, all of a sudden the diabetes begins to dissipate. That as you begin to move from eating any and everything down to a plant predominant diet, the blood pressure begins to lower. As you begin to move from eating any and everything down to a plant predominant diet, the cholesterol levels and the sources of inflammation begin to dissipate. There's power in your choices of what you make. Studies have shown that when we partake of these foods, rich from the earth, powerful, that cross the land, that we know from all of the most long-lived individuals across the world, they're called blue zones. There's only one in North America, that's in Loma Linda, California. The others are in Greece and Italy and Japan, Okinawa, Japan. It centers around a plant predominant diet. And when you partake of that, studies have shown 82% of individuals in a study were shown to improve the blood flow to their heart. That means you don't need docs like me who put in stents. You don't need docs like me who are giving you pills, but you need to take on the mantle of changing your diet and changing your lifestyle, because there's power that can happen there. There's not only that, turning our attention back to COVID real quick, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt, there was a study that showed that when you eat broccoli sprouts, something so simple and unique that it empowers your immune system. Something we call the T killer cells begin to activate, and they're your first line of defense to stop the coronavirus, to stop all the immune. And this was tested inside the influenza virus, and there's power that's there. Studies have shown that when you look at something called quercetin is a component found as far as in the skin of like many of your fruit, your apples and your elderberry, and in some of the other green leafies too as well, that there's so much power in the things that oftentimes we shave off and we cast away. There's a growing science and research that's happening that tells us that the foods that we have are for our healing. The tree is for our healing. The tree of life, the fruits of life are there for us. Not only that, we look at things like zinc. Zinc is contained inside of our grains, our beans, and our legumes, our tofu and the soybeans. That there's power. The zinc begins to heighten the function of the immune system. It's what you need in order to mount an attack against the viruses, against these assailants, because guess what? We're in a constant battle against wellness versus illness. And it takes intentional efforts on a day in and day out basis becomes important. I want to encourage you, and there's others who are going to chat on this a bit more, but you have to move. I'm going to be a heretic. And so those who are coming after me, don't stone me now. But I'm going to tell you, don't worry about exercising, but worry about moving. Walk a little bit more. climb a little bit more, stand up a little bit more, engage in something we call neat, get neat with it. Non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Studies have shown as if you just walk around on the phone, if you're standing up while you're cooking, you're burning calories, you're improving your immune system, you're decreasing the inflammation. There's power that's there. Lastly, I'm going to tell you in this society right now, with all of COVID, with everything happening, we're speaking about social distancing. I want to tell you, don't socially distance, but physically distance to stop the spread. Because when you maintain your social network, studies have shown that you can decrease the likelihood of succumbing to the effects of a viral infection, that you're less likely to manifest symptoms when you have a high social network. When you have a poor or low social network, when you're depressed, it increases the likelihood towards illness. That when you're stressed increases, that there goes the likelihood of you catching a cold, of you having these issues that are there. So these are the important things. So I only have a short time with you today, but I wanted to give you a teaser of the power that's before you, that God's put before you, that science has backed up and shown us that there's power in the food to transform our body. But here's the catch I want to leave you with. There's many out there who may say, Doc, I know this already. I heard that already, but knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do. You have to commit to doing it. It's not about money. There's no financial incentive by me telling you to eat healthfully, but for the love of my community to say that we have to transform. We have to be better than what we were before. We have to get selfish. This is not common. People don't like saying this in the church. They don't like it when I say it in my church, but we have to get selfish. What do I mean by selfish? I want you to get into be spiritual, mindful, right? It can restore your mind. It can go ahead and strengthen your willpower when you engage. I told you I didn't like exercise, but the E stands for exercise. I want you to get active. That's what it means, is be intentional, track your steps, get a partner, go forward. The L stands for love, choosing to love instead of hate. Right now, it's so easy to focus on hateful thoughts, but choosing that way becomes important. The F stands for food, real food, whole food, as I just outlined. The I stands for intimacy. It could be with a dog, it could be with a friend, it could be with anyone, a cat. You have an intimate relationship. It's been shown to be restorative. That's there. S, the second S stands for sleep. So many of us suffer with poor sleep. We don't get enough sleep, which heightens our stress hormone cascade. And the H lastly stands for humor. Get happy, laugh a little bit. I ask patients all the time, tell me the last thing you did that made you laugh. What's the last thing you did to help you get selfish? You have to get selfish. They tell us on the airplane, they tell us all the time, put your oxygen mask on, then help the person next to you. Get selfish. Help yourself and help others. For more information, I encourage you, follow us. Go to slavefood.org. Follow us at Slave Food on Facebook or on YouTube at Slave Food Project. We have more information for you there. We're constantly giving lectures as we prepare really to launch into making this a worldwide phenomenon to help people change their lives. Thank you so much for having me.
So thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm thrilled to be here with you. I am the body aspect of this health fair, and I wanted to give a little bit of the backdrop. On the very bottom is a very disturbing statistic. You can actually see that African American women have the highest rates of getting their pap smears done, but actually have also the highest death rates adjusted per population despite that. Again, connecting to the structural issues in place in our health systems, from an environmental perspective, educational systems, every aspect. I know we're going to talk more about the mind aspect, so I'll defer to our other panelists, but here you can see the breakdown of by race and ethnicity, risk of depression and current depression. Again, disparities. Similarly, colorectal cancer rates, disparities. Here I want to show you the causes of death on the left side, and then leading causes of premature death as defined as death under 75 years of age. Generally, these trends are similar across populations, so heart disease and stroke and cancer that tend to be the top reasons. breakdown by group sex. For the leading cause of premature death in Black men is homicide. I find that just staggering. I've been asked to speak a bit about COVID as well and the disparities within the pandemic. And I highlight in the yellow, this is the age-adjusted rate per 100,000 population. So you can see here, Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander have the highest death rate. It's a relatively small population comparatively in a small N, so small number of patients where that data was collected. But African Americans in Los Angeles, this is Los Angeles specific data, have the highest death rate from COVID. When you look at poverty level, you see here again, the higher the rate of poverty, the more likely you are to die from this infection. So again, it's not just something biochemical or biologic, it's the structural issues in place that facilitated the pandemic spread and the disparate outcomes. What are some of the risk factors for more severe illness from COVID? So people who are older, this is defined as greater than 65, who live in nursing homes or other congregate situations. Younger populations, obesity is the number one risk factor, which is endemic in our African American community. So to me, one of the most important things to talk about when we can't overnight undo the structure and true mortality is our personal agency. So we're not out of the woods yet, right? We have many, many months to go before we see the numbers drop for COVID. And again, this disproportionately affects our communities and people are dying disproportionately in our communities. So we need to be the ones to own this. Masks at all times, hand washing. You know, I often will see the trend of wearing gloves out, but if you touch something and then you touch your face and you touch your phone and you're wearing that same pair of gloves, you have spread the germs all over. So unless you're going to take off your gloves every time after you leave the house, it's better to hand wash than it is to wear gloves. Keeping distance when able. Really, this is from the CDC website. Cruise travel is just off of the table. It's one of the scariest places to be if somebody is COVID positive, and non-essential air travel as well. Continuing your meds, making sure you have a sufficient supply of your meds, and working with your provider to make sure you have what you need is critically important. Making sure your vaccinations are up to date. So we will be heading into the flu season shortly. This is not going to be one of those flu seasons where this is negotiable. Everybody needs to get their flu shot. Flu and COVID are going to overlap this fall, and people are going to die. Don't wait to get care if you need it. So the hospitals are prepared to make sure that you don't get any infection from healthcare workers or others. It is safer in the hospital than it is often at your grocery store. So please, if you feel like you have something that is affecting your health, don't delay. We're seeing numbers of heart attacks and strokes go down. That is not because I think people are not getting heart attacks and strokes. It's because I believe it's happening and people are not coming to get care. We'll see the consequences of this in another 6 to 12 months, unfortunately. The other critical part of having personal agency is our own bodies, right? Keeping our bodies as healthy as we can, mitigating the risks that we see put you at a more higher likelihood of having morbidity or mortality from COVID. So 30 minutes of cardio, 5 times a week. Are you walking every day? Are you doing the stairs in your house? Are you parking as far as you can away from the door of the grocery store and doing that extra stretch? All of that counts. All of that helps. working towards having a healthy weight. That is defined as a body mass index for us. Soda and beer and alcohol, these are things we need to be cutting out and limiting. Nicotine in any form is damaging to our bodies and to your lung health. And COVID-19 is primarily a respiratory disease. Despite it being legal, you know, marijuana is an inhalant if you're smoking it, right? That is bad for your lungs. Again, thinking about your respiratory health. Making smart dietary choices. So fried foods, sweets, salt, those are all things that have downstream effects for us. And a Mediterranean diet is really the healthier diet to be trying to work towards. Fruits and veggies, whole grains, healthy fats. I wanted to share some of the statistics because I think it's so important that we just know the facts about this and work in the same ways that Dr. Smith and Dr. Matthew are going to talk about dismantling the structural pieces while also having personal agency. It is important that we own what we can own and take care of our bodies and our families' bodies as well, and keep the toxins out of our bodies. That is really the only way we're going to be able to combat things like COVID and other infections that are for sure going to come. This is, you know, we live in a global environment, and with travel and just the way that the world is set up now, an infection or a virus that starts in one place of the world is guaranteed to spread to other parts. So we need to actually make sure that we treat our bodies like temples and keep them as healthy as we can. I know there'll be time for questions later, so I'll stop there.
So I would like to dedicate this song to you all, and we're gonna still keep it moving. The first thing what we're gonna start doing is working on the feet. You know, we start from the bottom, let's go to the top. So what I want you to do, if you're sitting in the chair, and if you got a chance to do it and you're not really, if you're not dressed comfortably, all we're gonna do is do some leg raises, or we're gonna do some marching, like one foot up, then the other. So you're gonna step up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, and up, down. Keep it going, keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. All right, now what we're gonna do now is stop in the middle. Now we're gonna take the leg over to the right, then we're gonna go over to the left, or either one side, then the other side. So here we go. One side, other side, switch, 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 and switch, switch, and switch, switch, and stop. Back to the middle. Okay, wonderful. You're looking good out there. And what I want you to do now, we're gonna go heel, toe, to the right side or to the left side. So we're gonna go with that motion where you're gonna be working the ankle. So once again, we're gonna go middle. All right, here we go. Heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, one side. Heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, other side. Heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, one side. Heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, other side. Back to the middle. Here we go, back to the middle. Okay, now what we're gonna do now, we're gonna lift the feet up, lift the legs up. We're gonna go out with the feet and come back into the center. So when I say up, out, here we go. Up, out, back in, up, out, back in, up, out, back in, up, out, back in. Keep it going, keep it going. Then keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. Yes, 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 yes. Out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in. Back to the middle and stop. All right, now we're gonna bring 1 foot forward and 1 foot back. All right, here we go. Switch, 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 and stop. Back to the middle. Wonderful, wonderful. Take a deep breath. Breathe in that wonderful gift that God has given us, that wonderful power that's in that breath. Get it all in you. And as you exhale, send that energy from the top of the head down to the tip of the toe, especially giving energy to those muscles that play a part on those movements, rejuvenating, strengthening, energizing. Okay, we're moving on up now. We're moving on up. Let's start with the hands. Get the hands out there, facing each other. Now let's go up over the head. And you can touch them together, or either if you want to cross over like this and then bring them up, you get an extra stretch. Once again, if you had any kind of surgery, any kind of operation on the shoulders or whatever, always check before you do it or think about when we're doing this. But most of these moves is nice and calm and easy. But if you had any extra surgeries or any surgeries on these areas that's going to work with the joints, just make sure you check with the doctor, says it's okay to do. All right, let's lean to one side. As we exhale, keep the arms together. Keep the arms straight as you can. Coming back to the middle. All right, let's go to the other side now. Nice and easy. Very, very good. Come on back up to the middle. One more time. Let's go forward now. Forward just a little bit. Now let's go back to the middle. Now let's lean back a little bit. Lean back a little bit. All right, and now back to the middle. And let's bring those hands down. Very good, very good. Shake those arms a little bit. Okay, we're still working on the arms now. Grab each elbow, get them out in front of you. You grab each elbow. Once again, this name of this class is your healing time. So you go at your own pace, you go at your own, you challenge your own self, and you the judge on if you think you can do this or not. And once again, this caution is only for those who had surgeries that may affect, these areas. What we're going to do now, we're going to take an elbow and we're going to put it to one side. Just put it nice and easy as you exhale, all the way to one side. Oh, you feel that stretched up there in that shoulder part on that area over there? Okay, let's go to the other side now. All the way over. All the way over. Hold it there. Okay, back to the middle. Very good. Let's take it up now. A little bit over the head. A little bit over the head. Wonderful. Let's go back down all the way to the hip. Just let it set there. Okay, once again, back over the head and down. Cut down. Up and down. Very good. And up and down. All right, very good. Now let's bring the arms out now. These are some mind exercises, what we're getting ready to do here. These mind exercises is here to let you know how where your mind is receiving the orders that you give it, coming from the brain or whatever you might be listening to. Once again, you got to make sure you stay focused. And all what you have to do in order to succeed in this exercise is to pay attention. How well is your attention span? So let's pay attention. Arms out. Do as you told, as your parents used to tell you when you were little kids. Look, do what I tell you. All right, not as I do, but do what I tell you. All right, here we go. Close them hands. Open, close, open, close, open. Now, who told y'all to do that? Did I tell you to close? See that? Another chance at it. Here we go. Open, close. Now, who told y'all to do that? Oh, I see y'all need some practicing. You need some practicing, so I ain't gonna bug you. Just keep that in your head that you later on, you got to do this. Practice it. Do it with your neighbors. Do it with your children. Do it while you're just sitting up in the chair. You can't do it yourself. You got to be doing it with somebody else. So, But here's another mind exercise. Flip them over. Hold them out. Hands out. Flip them over. Flip them up. Flip them over. Flip them up. Flip them over. Flip them up. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Y'all don't think I saw that, but I did. All right. Once again, this is another mind exercise for you to practice on. All right. We're going to get up a little bit. For those who is on the floor who can stand up, this is the exercise that's good for you as well. This is a mind exercise. If you can't do it now, if you can't do it now, do it when you get a chance where you can actually do this. What I want you to do, stand up straight. I want you to ball your fist up, point your wrist down, and then I want you to lift up that leg and just balance. Now, those who may be elderly or those who are not sure what they balance, you can do it in front of your chair. Behind the chair, you can just lift one hand up and just let that hand hold that chair up. But the whole point is to see how long you can balance. Once again, the knee is even with the ankle. In that area, knee even with the ankle, and then you just release yourself. All right? Do that and see how long you can do that without falling over. So that's a good mind exercise for you as well. Now we're going to move straight on. We're going to move right along. We have some more floor exercises that we're going to give you. This floor exercise is very good. And once again, I will give the caution to you If you had any back surgeries or any surgeries at the spine or shoulders, make sure you check with your doctor. But if you're good to go, this is an exercise that's very good for lower back pain. It's very good for putting your body in proper alignment, and it's called the rock and roll. And my wonderful assistant, Mr. Ira Linder here, is going to perform this as I instruct you, either to do it now or when you can do it later, because it's very easy to do. Down on the floor, you grab your knees behind you, you grab your hand behind, bring your legs up, grab your elbows if you can, or just hold on to what you can, but hold on tight. Tuck your head to your knees, and I want you to, you're gonna rock back nice and easy on the exhalation. So let's do this. Going back on the exhalation, nice, and coming up on the inhalation. Remember that. Back on the exhalation, and up on the inhalation. This exercise puts your whole body in proper alignment. Got that? Your whole body. If you sit down too much, got that hump in your back. If you're doing too much boom boom the night before, it puts your whole body in proper alignment. So easy. And don't worry about it if you can't come all the way up. Just rock where you are, and eventually you will with practice. Okay, this is another exercise. And this exercise also is excellent for what? Releasing gas. And you know we get that gas in us sometimes when we have that improper eating and eating the wrong food. That gas getting you run over here, run over there, you think you're having a heart attack. This exercise helps release that gas, the rock and roll. This other exercise here is called the knee squeeze. This also is a gas releasing pose. If you're telling it to any of your friends, any of your neighbors, make sure you be out of the way when you tell them to do this. Don't be sitting back there watching them, because when they come out, I don't want y'all getting blown up against the wall. Okay, let's take one leg and bring it up to your chest. He's bringing one leg up to his chest. He's holding it real tight. Keep that other leg straight. All right, now let's switch off. The other leg is coming up. You're holding it to your chest for a few seconds, and then you're bringing it down. Now you're going to bring both legs up. Bring both legs up. Hold it for a bit, and then you're coming down. Wonderful. Now, once again, if you can't do this now, since we're doing this virtual, when you get a chance, do it when you get a chance on your way and you're comfortable or whatever, because these two exercises is very, very good for us. You know, with back problems, and you know, like I said, when that gas gets you moving around, you got to get it out of you. You don't want it to stay in you, because all it's going to do is mess you up even worse. So once again, we're going to come on, get back up, bring your chair back. And we're just going to calm down a little bit more now with these next few movements, because we're on our way. We're on our way to you guys moving to a next phase. But once again, I'd like to thank you all for allowing me to be here. I'd like to thank you all for being just as aware as I am and as our neighbors. And that's the whole point, is share and to make it all happen. So right now, let's just take some time. When we get to the end, so let's go with some relaxation. You know, you can do this at any particular time, and we're gonna start with some breathing exercises. We're gonna start using our full diaphragm. We gotta start using what God gave us. We just can't be doing that little shallow breathing. You know, that means you're not getting enough oxygen for your organs to work correctly, for you to think correctly. So know that this air that's here is a gift. It's not just something that we have to do. It's a gift from God. Get all you in. Be greedy with it. Don't be greedy with being stingy with your money, but you can be greedy with this air. So as you're breathing in, start from the lower part of the stomach first. Breathing in, put one hand on top of the stomach, one hand on the bottom if you wish. You're filling it up. You're filling it up. Now it's time to exhale. You're going to push that lower hand in first, and then push the rest of that air down toward your spine. You're getting all that air out of you. So once again, let's get it in. Pushing it all the way out, all the way up. Now tuck that stomach in and push all the rest of that air down. You do this when you feel stressed out. You do this when you feel mad. You do this when you even feel sick. You do this when it's hard for you to make some decisions. Go somewhere, sit down, take some deep breaths, close your eyes, and get that energy in you so it can start going to your brain and your head for you to make better choices and for your body to respond even better for you. So once again, I'd like to take this time to thank you for your wonderful, wonderful attention and your wonderful, wonderful time. And once again, if you need more, you know where to find me, because I got a whole lot more. I got 45 years of doing what I'm doing, been doing more. So, you know, energy's out to you. Blessings out to you. And let's just sit down now and let's just calm down a bit and let's just take some deep breaths as we end our session. So once again, close those eyes. Breathe in that wonderful energy. As you exhale, send it from the top of your head down to the tip of your toe. Rejuvenating, strengthening, healing, empowering. As I sit here nice and quiet, I'm breathing in this wonderful energy, this wonderful gift that God has given me. And I'm using my full diaphragm, not just a little bit of it. And I'm sending it as I exhale, this energy from the top of my head down to the tip of my toe, healing everything in between, strengthening everything in between, rejuvenating everything in between. It's up to us to protect these gifts, body, mind, and spirit. Do not give them away. Do not allow distractions to take them away. Stay focused, my warriors, and we will succeed. As you continue to be quiet, breathe in that wonderful life force, and as you continue to exhale, send it to where you want it to go. And don't forget, send it out to the world, because we all need that love that we were talking about and that we were hearing. And that's one way to send it out. If they don't want to hear it through our lips, let's just send it out to the atmosphere, and we will attack them that way.
Thank you, Dr. Sherry, for inviting me to speak at this wonderful wellness and health fair. And my topic is spirit. I know that you're having mind, body, and spirit on today, and I'm going to talk about spirit. And what is that? And I want to put it in layman's terms. I want to put it very, very simply. Spirit is an energy. It is the God energy that is in each and every one of us. And so when we tap into that energy, we become even more of what we were created to be. In other words, let's say that there's this electricity that is all around us, which is that God energy. When you get plugged into it, you begin to express and become the attributes of God. And that is what we need at this time, in this moment. It's calling us to be what we were sent here to be. And that is the God energy. So what is that? The attributes of God are creativity, courage, and fearlessness. Love that is all-encompassing and unconditional. Compassion for another human being that does not know who they are yet. These are all the attributes of God. So when you plug into that energy, you become inflated. Every cell of your body becomes that energetic source of God. What does that look like now? Well, this is our time. This is our time to express ourselves as God on this planet. What does that mean? That means that in this time of the COVID and the social unrest, as they put it, which is actually the culmination of energetic God beings and light beings coming together after 400 years of oppression. And so you want to be expressing power. You want to be expressing courage. And I'll tell you what that looks like. For those of you who have seen my video, it's called Expanded Awareness, Exposing the Intentional Weapon of Hate. I go in deep. And I'm not talking about chokeholds. I'm not talking about defunding the police. What I'm talking about is an intentional weapon of hate that the government has used since the inception of this country. It is a weapon of hate. There are messages that are intentionally sent out to promote one race being superior over another race. In this country, Caucasians are supposed to be superior over those with a darker hue, so our black and brown people. Once you understand that this is a deep-seated, not just structural, it's an intentional weapon of hate. So if I can get you to hate and fight, I can do all kinds of things over here while you're not looking. Hate is a weapon of distraction and confusion, and it's used and has been used throughout this country. Now, when you become aligned with that electricity I was talking about, that courage, that power, the veils are lifted. So you're no longer distracted by this little thing over here and this is bigger than all of those things. This is an intentional weapon of hate. Now, when the government talks about weapons of mass destruction being on the other side of the planet, we need to be talking about the weapons of mass destruction that are used and have been used in this culture of America for 400 years. By diminishing the Native American, by making them less than, I can take their land. I can have you fighting with them. I can do all kinds of things as long as you're hating.
Okay,
and so how do you combat hate?
You will chime in before you introduce.
The only way that you combat hate is with love. So when I say love and that love is powerful, sometimes people think love is all about hugs. And even though that is an expression of love, it can be an expression of love, what I'm talking about is that love gives you courage to call a thing a thing. And when I'm talking about weapons of mass destruction, I'm going right at the root of what America uses to keep control over people. And once we see that that is an intentional weapon to control people and get them really reeling and dealing and distracted in hating Muslims, hating Chinese people, hating, and even when I say it, it's laughable, but this is a weapon that they know works. And when you can be distracted by that weapon, it's working. I'm not going to be distracted by it. I'm going to call it out. I'm going to call a thing. And the reason it's structural is because it's governmental. It's baked into the American culture. This is how they operate. And when I say they, I'm talking about the powers that be that are in control of the structures. And when I say structures, what am I talking about? I'm talking about the media. It's no accident that you turn on the news and a black face is on the screen longer with the words criminal or violence or whatever. Even if they were the victim, you'll notice that the voiceover is talking about violence. And one of the ways that I really saw that happen, and you can see this too when you're awake and aware, messaging behind the hate.
I had this
So violence, even when you say protest and you have violence, you say that's violent protests, even though the protests were not violent. So what I want you to see is when you become that energy of God, there are veils that are lifted. And so you don't need, you're not even stressed out about it. You see it from an elevated stance and you call it out because you have no fear. Perfect love casts out fear. So not only will you see it in the media, in the messaging, but you'll also see it, of course, in employment practices. You'll see it in the police force. It's baked in. So what do, Dr. Carmen, once you have this God energy? When you have that God energy, we're going to have different gifts and talents that we've been cultivating for years. And this is where we kick it in. We kick it in those areas where we have been gifted by the divine, and we go after those areas. So for me, it's calling a thing. I've always been a rebel. And I will call a thing without any fear. I'm not afraid of losing anything. And you have to get to that place. Who gives you that courage? God energy gives you that courage, where you're not afraid to lose what you have in order to speak the truth to power. That's my gift. I've also connected with my
Unmuted
neighbors
myself,
and
but
letting them know that I'm not fighting with somebody that doesn't like Black people. What a waste of energy. What I'm doing is going after the baked in racism that is in our culture. And I'm doing that in ways that fit my gifts and talents. So one of the other things is I'm a therapist with Talkspace. That's why I'm usually on the internet 24/7, because Talkspace is an online therapy session. And so what happens is I find that most of the people that are suffering from racial trauma, they talk to me about, well, my friend doesn't understand why the protests are happening, or they say all lives matter instead of Black lives matter. And what I say to them is, do you realize that is so much bigger than your friend, your neighbor, your family member that doesn't understand? Don't waste your energy and create stress for yourself in dealing with that. We're dealing with a culture. What is a culture? Imagine two fish are swimming in the ocean, and somebody asks the fish, so tell me, what temperature is the water? And the fish looks at each other and they go, what's water? We're swimming in racism, and it's intentional. It is a way to control people. And it is a way that all the systems in the United States work, and they work it that way in other countries as well, but I'm focusing on America. And that has tentacles in the police department, in social services with foster care. I saw it in foster care when I worked in foster care. They did studies about Black kids being removed from their families more than white kids, and we're less than the population of that city. This is systemic. It's baked in. And it happens when we're little. It's intentional. It's a weapon of mass destruction. Here's another way to tell that this is a weapon of mass distraction, I should say. While all of this unrest is going on, go on the government websites and see what policies were passed while they get you to hate on somebody. One of the things that stands out that I noticed is that there was a major nuclear weapons plant was passed. I believe it was June 1st. While people are doing this hate thing, that's what it's used for. It's a distraction to do something else that nobody voted for, nobody knew was on the docket. It's a way to sneak things in. That's one of the ways that it's used. Another way that it's used is to spend money on weaponizing the police department. Who benefits from that? Our warmongering culture of America. If we're not going to sell weapons over here and over here, we're going to sell them here. And the people that benefit are the people selling weapons. This is all about corporations, money, but it's also how the government has stolen land from Native Americans and kept African people enslaved. So going after that big cabal of the government is one of my things that I will always shine a light on, knowing that that goes against the agenda because they want to keep people hating on each other. So our gifts and talents are so important. And when our spirit is connected to the divine, we have a mind that is healthy, not depressed or anxious, because what is in control is not. The other thing is that our body becomes younger when we're plugged into that energy. So I can sit here almost 60 years old telling you that I feel like I'm 25. I'm ready to go. Why? Because that energy in me is timeless, is eternal, and it's loving. So one of the things that I want you to know, and this is my closing statement because this is very important, angry with people. The government has been baking this cake. It's a chocolate cake. They give black and brown people a piece. They give white people a piece. And we're eating the cake and black people are going, wait a minute, I'm dying here. There's racism here. I'm not treated fairly over here. And white people are eating that cake and going, ooh, this is delicious. What do you mean? We're tasting the same cake. It's a great cake. And I'm trying to argue with the other person and tell them that it's a horrible cake. They're trying to argue with me that it's a great piece of cake. Can we start talking about who's baking the cake? I'm not upset with people. I'm not going to argue with people. Our fight as spiritual beings is with that dark side, if you want to call it, that side that devalues people as a weapon of hate. They're baking the cake. It's had racism in it the whole time. And I'm going after that. And I love people because they're eating the same cake I am. I want to go after who's baking the cake. And who helps me do that is God. God takes away the veil so you can see it clearly. And once you see it clearly, you have the courage to call a thing. You'll be vitalized, energetic while you're doing it, knowing that God is in control and I am expressing God in this time, in this way. And I'm so glad to be here now because this is our time.
Thank you very, very much. And thank you to each and every one for making this day possible. Thank you to our speakers that we've already heard from. And so this is your community forum, and very, very important. The organizers were explaining that this is for us. This is for you. And I think it's beautiful. I think that the impact of what has been shared sometimes is not always fully appreciated. The fact of the matter is you have just been handed, those of us who have ears to hear, the very keys to health. Thank God for Dr. Batiste, who shared about stress and the effects of the body and what we can do. And Dr. Riley, who shared about the mind and the need to be heard and the chance to reset and even some practical ways to restore. And they laid it out for us. Yes, ride our bike. Yes, journal. And Brother Leonard Davis, who I love and have known for years, thank God for him. Yes, breathe properly. Yes, meditation. Yes, journal. Yes, eat your vegetables. Yes, think positively. Spend time around positive people. Yes, laugh. Yes, have fun and exercise. They already gave the keys to health. And so the organizer said we have a wonderful cardiologist talking about physical health, and then we have a therapist and pastor talking about mental health, and then they want me to talk about spiritual health. They already laid it out how to heal anything that is sick. The only thing that I can say about the spirit that hasn't been said yet is this, and stay with me. The spirit, when we talk about mind, body, and spirit, the spirit is the only part of you that never has and never will need healing. Let me say that one more time. The spirit, and stay with me, is the part of us that does not need healing. And at first that sounds a little crazy, but understand what I'm saying. I am not saying that the psyche does not need healing. Yes, that's what psychotherapy is for. There is a non-physical part of us. It's non-physical, it's non-rational, And it does need healing because it has been traumatized. It does have memory of the negative things that have happened. It does carry burdens. It does carry generational pain and cycles. It does receive the trauma and the terror of racism. It self-esteem can be affected and needs to be. So when I say that the spirit doesn't need healing, I'm not talking about the psyche. I'm not even talking about the soul, because the soul is talking about personality and individuality. I'm not talking about the subconscious mind. I'm not talking about emotional pain bodies. All of those things need to be healed. And a lot of the healing that's necessary for those has been spelled out for us today, or we've been pointed in that direction. But I'm talking about the spirit. Your psyche, which can be damaged, is not your spirit. Your soul, which can be traumatized, is not your spirit. Your memory is not your spirit. When we're talking about breath, Brother Leonard talked about breath, and Dr. Baptiste talked about take it all the way back to the Garden of Eden. Well, let's take it to the Garden of Eden. In Genesis 2:7, it says, God formed Adam from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. So God breathed a breath into him. Before that, he was just a lump of clay. Before that, he was just a hump of a mass of something. But when God breathed the breath of life, and that breath that got breathed into humanity, the Hebrew word is ruach, or it means breath, or it means spirit. It is the breath of God. It is the spirit of God. It is God, the essence, the spirit, it is God that has been breathed into us, and that is what makes us alive. Even doctors have trouble really pinpointing what is it about life? Is it an electrical current? Is it a chemical reaction? Is it a brain function? Is it a heartbeat? No, there's something behind all of that. It has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with pain. It has nothing to do with diabetes. It is the breath, the spirit of God, and God breathed God's spirit into us, which means that that spirit is our spirit. So you see what I mean when I say that the spirit, capital S, is the one part of us that doesn't need healing because it already is God. It already is healthy. It's healthy because it's divine. As a matter of fact, with all that we are going through and all that we have been through, what is it that even keeps us healthy through generations and centuries of oppression, through a standard American diet, through financial stress, through health dysfunction, through negative thinking? What is it that even keeps you? When I look at a child, the kid is abused at home. The kid is miseducated at school, malnourished in the streets. We talked about that, terrorized by the justice system. Then they come to church. Theology messed them up, and religion messed them up too. Not to mention the generational stuff that kid is dealing with. Dealing with all of that, what keeps that kid smiling? What keeps that kid optimistic? That is the spirit. That is the spark of God within that child and within each one of us. Do you understand when I say that your spirit is the only thing that doesn't need healing because it's already God, it's already divine? It doesn't need healing because it's already eternal. See, the idea of healing is what? Something is going in a certain direction and then it falls off. In order to get it back going in that certain direction, we got to take some action. We got to take some medicine. We got to have some therapy. We got to have a change of course and achieve healing. But when we're talking about the spirit, there is nothing to change. Think about your own life. I was born, and when I was born, I mean, now I'm 6 foot something tall. When I was born, I wasn't that tall. So life has changed. The only constant is change. My height has changed. My weight has changed. My libido has changed through the year. My physical location has changed. The understanding that I have. I go to the doctor. I get the blood work done. That changes because this time this was at this level. This time this was at that level. everything changes. My mental health has changed through the seasons of life and with learning and with growing and with suffering. Everything changes, but all of those changes have happened. It's still me. It's the same me who experienced kindergarten, who experienced high school, who experienced the ups and downs, who fell in love, who went through life. So in all of those changes, there is a spark that has not changed. All of those changes have happened at the same address, have happened to I. And that I, and God told Moses, that's the I am. That is the spirit that we're talking about. And that is your spirit. And it is God within us, and it cannot be changed. See, the body only gets a few years. So yes, by all means, let's optimize our health and make sure that those are good years. But even as much as we optimize it, and Dr. Batiste said this himself, doesn't matter what you do, one day it will be earth to earth, ashes to ashes, and dust to dust. Now, while we're here, we want to make it as positive and as joyous and as seamless and as optimized as it can be. But that day is still going to come where the body will have its end date. Even Jesus Christ was only a human being for a limited amount of time. So, same for us as well. And the mind also. Now, the mind is non-physical and it can extend beyond, but even the mind is also limited. So the physical body is limited by a lot of things, gravity and age and time. The mind is also limited. The mind is limited by what it can understand and believe. And we just saw where Leonard Davis had us putting the hands up and hands down. And as smart as some of us are, I couldn't keep my hand up and down when his son asked me to. The mind is limited by what we believe, by what we understand. The mind can be poisoned. The mind can be miseducated. And when it's miseducated, it keeps operating. It just operates poisoned. Now, what can step outside of the mind and examine and evaluate the mind and tell the mind something's wrong and be able to fix it? That is the spirit. That is your spirit. So yeah, the spirit is divine. The spirit is eternal. It stretches from before birth, and then it goes even after death. And those are mysteries in the human mind. But we know that there is an eternal aspect because we know that God is real and God is real in us. And since God is real, God is perfect. So the God in us must be perfect. That doesn't mean I never make a mistake. That doesn't mean I can do no wrong, but it means that there is a part of me. TV doesn't want me to tap into this part of me. The government doesn't want me to tap into this part of me. Madison Avenue and the advertisers and the grocery stores and the restaurant industry and the movie industry, they don't want me to tap into my spirit. Even, and I'm not talking about the good doctors that we have, but even big pharmaceutical and the industries making millions of billions don't want us to tap in to the true key of health, which is that we already have health because we already are health on some level. It's for us to live into the perfection. If when God created man and woman, we are created in God's image, in God's likeness, then some of that perfection got to be in there somewhere. Some is deeper down than others, but it's there. Perfect. The spirit is that spark of perfection. This is what Jesus meant in the Sermon on the Mount, the longest, probably the most significant sermon that Jesus gave that's recorded in the Bible. He says, be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Now, a lot of times we look at that and we say, well, I'm only human. I can't be perfect. Being perfect, when he says it here, Matthew 5, it does not mean you better stop gambling, you better stop procrastinating, you better stop eating caramel corn at midnight or else you won't go to heaven. That's usually what we think. Well, let me be perfect. Let me be better. Let me be better. But look at that word, perfect. And I had to look at it. It means you have a consummated goal that you have achieved. It means you are complete. It means you have gone through the necessary steps in order to get to the end goal. That's what perfect is. So even in our bodies right now, even in a child's body, even if there are some things going on wrong, there are a lot of things operating absolutely perfectly. Thank God and pray to God, my heart, kidneys are operating perfectly right now. Now, if and since my kidneys, for example, are operating perfectly right now, if they're operating perfectly, there's no more that I have to add and do to make them better. All I have to do is maintain what God has already done. Now, we know that the physical ailments are real, and I am not saying, hey, everything's fine. You know, if your foot hurts, your foot hurts. If you have cancer, you have cancer. If you have hypertension, you have hypertension. So to say the spirit is perfect is not about ignoring what is. It's about tapping into an even greater truth. So I'm not ignoring the truth, but I'm tapping into and living from the ultimate truth, because the Spirit of God that's alive in you right now, it only knows how to be perfect. We're talking about God. It only knows how to shine. Yeah, the world doesn't want to see you shine, but all it knows how to do is shine. And so the world can corrupt us and corrupt our thinking to where we forget the truth of who we are. The world want to shut us down. The world can take your security away. The world can rob you of justice, which it has. And guess what? The world won't ever give it back. If you're waiting for the world to restore your health, if you're waiting for the world to restore your peace of mind, if you're waiting for the current president to perfect your life, or if you wait until November for the next president to perfect your life, or your doctor, or your therapist, or your pastor, you're going to be waiting. Jesus said, the kingdom of God, which is heaven, which is the promise of the Spirit, it does not come by observation. No one's going to look and say, oh, here's heaven, here's health, there's health, but it's already within you. And so all I can say is, let us live from within our spirit. Let us, with all the world going on, get quiet at some point and realize the truth deep at the center of my being, beyond, this old house that will pass away. There is a true capital S spirit, a capital T truth, an infinite well of love. Dr. Batiste said that stress is when the resources that we have are outstripped by the obligations that we have to face. I'm paraphrasing his idea, and I love it. So if we have enough resources, there can be no stress if there are enough resources. So we're tapping into what is an infinite well, what is an eternal well, a divine well, a real well in us, as us. And now, in a moment of meditation, allow that love, that God, that spirit to become you, to flow to the surface, to fill your heart, to fill your organs, to fill your cavity. No, it's not physically filling your cavity, but let that power of love, that spirit, that truth fill your consciousness. Let it radiate out from you in all directions, because we reap what we sow. So when we can turn ourselves into love, which we have by the power of our mind to do, and we can radiate out love, guess what's returning back to us multiplied? More love, more joy. Matter of fact, the more God spirit we use, the more we have to give, because it's not like money or any sort of finite thing. We're talking about God here. And let us express our joy. And then when we live from the spirit in this way, this ain't about religion. This ain't about a church. This is about you as a real manifestation of the true and living God. When I can stay there, if I can just visit there, much less stay there, now my spirit tells my mind what my body needs, and my spirit will crave the food that it nourishes. It will, the toxic relationships will fall away and the positive people will come. Now, it's simple. Yes, it's not easy. And so all the steps that we heard today, meditative practice, yes, breathe, yes, exercise, yes, get a mentor, yes, more vegetables, yes. But in all of that, in all the stuff we got to do and all the blanks that are blank right now that we got to go fill in, take some time and never forget about the one blank that doesn't need to be filled in because it's already full to the fullness. And that is my spirit, your spirit, the spirit. It shines on all, not just those who I deem deserve it, but the sun shines on the righteous and the unrighteous. Rain falls on the just and the unjust. And my spirit is unadulterated, undiscriminating, shining for you, for me, and for all of creation. God bless you. God love you.